The sky burns. The sky turned red. At first, people thought it was just a strange sunset, but then the lights in the sky grew larger, moving too fast, too precise. Cities across the world looked up, watching as fire streaked across the heavens. The news channels scrambled for answers. Breaking news: unidentified objects have entered Earth's atmosphere. In Washington, London, Beijing, and every major city, sirens screamed. Military radars picked up the incoming fleet. Governments went into emergency meetings, but they had no time to decide anything. The invaders had already arrived. Then the first explosions rocked the cities. The HFY Empire had come. The arrival. Colonel James Carter stood on a military base in Colorado, staring at the sky. His radio crackled with frantic voices. "We've got over 100 enemy vessels in the atmosphere. Too big to be human. Too fast." Carter clenched his fists. So it's finally happening. For years, some had warned of an alien invasion, but no one had believed it. Now, massive black warships hovered over Earth's cities. The ships were covered in strange, glowing symbols, like ancient carvings that pulsed with power. Then, the bombing began. In New York, alien ships opened fire, sending plasma blasts into skyscrapers. Buildings collapsed in flames. The streets filled with screaming civilians, running as their world crumbled around them. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower shattered under a direct hit. In Beijing, the Forbidden City was turned to dust. Across the world, entire cities fell in minutes. Earth's first response. The world's military scrambled to respond. Fighter jets launched into the air, streaking toward the alien ships. The first missiles shot toward the invaders' warships. Nothing happened. The missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible shields. The alien ships did not even slow down. Carter's radio crackled again. "Our weapons aren't working. Their shields are too strong." Carter watched as one of their best fighter jets fired its last missile before getting blasted out of the sky. "They're too advanced," a pilot's dying voice said over the radio before going silent. Carter took a deep breath. "So, this is how we die." The ground invasion. Then came the drop pods. Metal capsules rained down from the sky, slamming into the streets like meteorites. The pods hissed open, revealing towering armored figures. The HFY soldiers stepped out, each one 7 feet tall, covered in thick black armor with glowing blue eyes. Their clawed hands gripped massive plasma rifles. Without hesitation, they opened fire. Civilians had no chance. People dropped where they stood, bodies burned by the alien weapons. A few brave police officers fired their weapons. Their bullets bounced off the aliens' armor like pebbles. One officer grabbed a grenade, pulled the pin, and ran toward the nearest alien, screaming. The explosion sent fire and smoke into the air. When the dust cleared, the alien stood untouched. Then, without emotion, it raised its rifle and fired. The last thing the officer saw was a blinding blue light. Humanity refuses to surrender. In the White House, the President of the United States sat in a darkened war room, watching live feeds from every major city. "They're wiping us out," a general muttered. "Not yet," the president said. "We're still breathing." Orders were given. Nuclear missiles were armed. If they were going to die, they were taking the enemy with them. But before they could launch, something happened. The alien mothership sent out a pulse, a planet-wide EMP blast. Every screen went dark. Every jet, tank, and missile silo shut down. The world was left defenseless. A deadly miscalculation. On board the HFY mothership, Overlord Vakor stood before a massive holographic display of Earth. His reptilian face showed no emotion as he watched the battle unfold. "It is as expected," he said to his war council. "These creatures are weak. Their weapons are primitive. Their armies crumble." He turned to his officers. "Within 3 days, this planet will belong to the HFY Empire." The officers bowed. "Glory to the Empire." Vakor smirked. Conquering Earth was easier than expected. What he did not know was that the battle had just begun. Down on Earth, Colonel Carter pulled himself from the rubble of his destroyed base. Around him, a few surviving soldiers gathered. "The world is falling apart," one of them muttered. "What do we do now?" Carter wiped the blood from his face. His eyes burned with rage. "We fight," he said. The Exervac thought they had already won. They had no idea what humanity was truly capable of. The real war was about to begin. Humanity strikes back. Colonel James Carter wiped the dust from his face. Around him, the smoldering ruins of the military base lay in silence. The sky above was still filled with the massive black warships of the Exervac Empire. Fires burned in the distance. The invasion was no longer a theory. It was reality. But Carter wasn't dead. And as long as he was breathing, the war wasn't over. He turned to the remaining soldiers, a ragtag group of survivors from different military divisions. Some were injured, others shaken, but all had one thing in common. They weren't ready to give up. Carter took a deep breath. "We can't fight them head on. Not yet. We're going underground," he said. "We regroup, we rearm, and then we make them bleed." The resistance rises. The world's governments had fallen silent. The EMP pulse had wiped out communications, power grids, and defenses. Without radar or satellites, the militaries were fighting blind. The humans had one advantage the Exervac did not understand: survival, adaptation, resistance. Across the world, underground bunkers still functioned. Hidden bases, built in case of nuclear war, now became humanity's last hope. Carter led his team through the wreckage of the base and into a hidden tunnel system. Deep underground, they found survivors, engineers, scientists, and special forces. A small army, battered but alive. The first order of business: finding a way to fight back. "We can't rely on missiles," Carter said. "We need to think differently." Then a young scientist, Dr. Evelyn Ross, stepped forward. "We don't have to destroy their shields," she said. "We just have to shut them down." Carter raised an eyebrow. "How?" Dr. Ross pulled up a blueprint of an alien plasma rifle, a weapon taken from a dead Exervac soldier. "Their tech is based on energy fields. If we can disrupt that, their ships and weapons become useless." Carter grinned. "Looks like we're stealing some alien toys." The first strike. The first attack was small but effective. A team of 10 soldiers, armed with only knives and stolen rifles, infiltrated an alien base in New Mexico. The Exervac did not expect resistance. They assumed the battle was over. That was their first mistake. Carter's team moved in silence, cutting down alien patrols one by one. The enemy, arrogant and overconfident, never saw it coming. Then, using EMP grenades, the team disabled an entire Exervac outpost. They recovered alien weapons, energy cells, and most importantly, intel. Carter looked over the stolen data. His eyes narrowed. "Their shields have a weakness," he muttered. It was only the beginning. The war changes. News of Earth's counterattacks spread quickly. More survivors joined the fight. Scattered military forces, rogue hackers, even civilian fighters began striking back. Humanity stopped running. They started hunting. The aliens' warships were powerful, but slow. They controlled the skies, but they couldn't hold the ground. Exervac patrols vanished in the night. Their supply depots exploded without warning. Their officers were found dead in their command posts. For the first time, the invaders felt fear. Deep in their mothership, Overlord Vakor watched reports of growing resistance. His golden eyes narrowed. "These creatures are adapting," he muttered. His advisors laughed. "Their weapons are weak. Their armies are broken." Vakor was not convinced. Something felt different. "Deploy more forces," he ordered. "Wipe them out completely." His officers saluted. "The humans will fall soon." Vakor turned back to the holographic display of Earth. "Then why does it feel like we are the ones being hunted?" The turning point. Carter stood at the entrance of an abandoned city. His radio crackled. All teams in position. Across the ruins, hundreds of human fighters hid in buildings, waiting. In the distance, a convoy of exervac transports rolled down the streets. Hundreds of alien soldiers, fully armored and ready to destroy anything in their path. Carter exhaled slowly. This was it. The moment the war changed. He raised his radio. Light them up. Explosions erupted across the street. Buildings collapsed onto the alien convoy. Fighters sprang from the rubble, firing stolen plasma rifles. The ambush was perfect. The exervac never expected it. Their mighty forces, built for direct combat, were not prepared for human guerrilla warfare. For the first time, the aliens lost a battle. And the war had only just begun. The alien miscalculation. The exervac had made a fatal mistake. They thought the battle was already won. They had expected submission, surrender, and fear. Instead, they got defiance, strategy, and bloodshed. The first signs of doubt. On board the exervac mothership, Overlord Vakor stood in the war chamber, staring at a holographic projection of Earth. The battle reports were clear. Human resistance was spreading. His golden eyes narrowed. Explain. One of his generals, Commander Xalroth, shifted uncomfortably. The humans have begun using our own weapons against us. Vakor's clawed fingers tapped against the control panel. That is not possible. Their technology is primitive. They are adapting, Xalroth admitted, faster than expected. Silence filled the war chamber. The exervac Empire had conquered over 50 worlds. They had faced resistance before, but nothing like this. A holographic map of Earth flickered to life. At first, red markings showed cities they had conquered. But now, new symbols appeared. Human strongholds, ambush sites, stolen alien equipment. The humans weren't just surviving. They were fighting back. Vakor's eyes burned with frustration. Then we must crush them completely. Earth's next move. In an underground bunker somewhere in the Rocky Mountains, Colonel Carter studied the latest intelligence reports. His team had hacked into an alien data hub and discovered something critical. The exervac shields were powered by a central energy source. Destroy it, and the alien fleet would become vulnerable. Carter slammed a fist on the table. That's our way in. Dr. Ross, the scientist leading the research on stolen alien tech, nodded. It's risky, but if we can get close enough, we might be able to overload their core. One of Carter's soldiers, Sergeant Mitchell, whistled. You're saying we have to sneak onto an alien warship, sabotage their energy source, and escape before we get vaporized? Carter grinned. Pretty much. Mitchell shook his head. I hate how much I like this plan. The unseen war begins. That exervac had overwhelming firepower. But humans had strategy. They didn't attack directly. They hit supply lines, sabotaged patrols, jammed communications. Every night, alien soldiers vanished, their bodies never found. Exervac warlords who once stood on balconies, overlooking burning cities, now feared the shadows. In London, resistance fighters hijacked an alien transport, smuggling stolen weapons across the city. In Tokyo, engineers repurposed alien energy cores to power hidden strongholds. In Brazil, jungle fighters lured exervac patrols into traps. Only bones were left behind. The war was no longer one-sided. Humanity was turning the invasion into a nightmare. The turning point. On a remote military outpost, a exervac commander stood at a holographic console, reviewing battle plans. Then the lights flickered. The holograms glitched. Before he could react, the shadows moved. A knife slashed through his throat. As his body hit the ground, Carter lowered his combat knife, wiping the alien blood off his glove. Behind him, his strike team silently took out the remaining guards. They had infiltrated a exervac command center. Dr. Ross quickly plugged a hacked alien device into the control panel. We're in, she whispered, downloading everything. The stolen data revealed something shocking. The HFY were losing control. Their warlords were arguing. The High Command was considering retreat. Carter smirked. They thought we were weak. He turned to his team. Let's prove them wrong. The fear spreads. Back on the HFY mothership, Valkor watched as more reports came in. His fleet was losing ships. His ground forces were crumbling. His soldiers were afraid. For the first time, the HFY faced an enemy that refused to surrender. One of his officers approached him cautiously. "Overlord, we have underestimated these creatures." Valkor's fists clenched. "Then we will burn this planet to the ground." The turning point. The war was changing. At first, the HFY thought Earth would fall in days. But now, weeks had passed, and the war was slipping from their grasp. Humanity was no longer running. Humanity was hunting. The Grand Assault Plan. In an underground command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Colonel Carter stood before a massive holographic table. The room was dimly lit, filled with the best remaining minds of Earth, scientists, military leaders, and resistance fighters. Carter tapped the holographic display of the alien fleet, his face unreadable. "We've hit their convoys. We've sabotaged their supply lines. We've made them bleed." He looked up at his team. "Now it's time to rip their heart out." Dr. Ross nodded, pulling up the stolen data from the enemy warship. "Their power core is their weakness. If we take it out, their shields will fail. Their weapons will shut down." Sergeant Mitchell smirked. "You mean they'll be just as vulnerable as we were on day one?" Carter grinned. "Exactly. They had one chance: a coordinated global attack. While Earth's remaining forces would launch massive guerrilla strikes, a small infiltration team would board the alien mothership and disable their shields from the inside. It was impossible, suicidal, but failure meant extinction. Carter looked at his team. "Let's get to work." The battle erupts. As night fell, Earth's skies lit up with fire. In New York, hidden missile silos, previously disabled by the EMP, roared to life, launching stealth nuclear warheads toward alien warships. In Berlin, fighter squadrons flew at low altitudes, using the ruins of the city as cover to avoid detection before ambushing enemy dropships. In Sydney, human warships, patched together from both Earth's technology and stolen HFY equipment, launched a desperate counterattack. The aliens were caught off guard. They expected scattered resistance. Instead, they were drowning in war. Meanwhile, Carter's infiltration team moved through the shadows of a destroyed HFY landing base. Their stolen alien disguises allowed them to get close to a docked warship. "Move fast, move quiet," Carter whispered. His team entered the belly of the beast. Inside the mothership, the corridors of the HFY mothership pulsed with blue energy. Strange symbols glowed along the walls, casting eerie shadows as Carter's team moved silently through the alien hallways. Dr. Ross carried a hacked energy core disruptor, their only way to shut down the shields. The deeper they moved, the heavier the resistance. The HFY were on high alert. Mitchell raised his plasma rifle. "They know we're here." Carter nodded. "Then we move fast." The firefight erupted. HFY warriors roared, plasma bolts flying through the air. Carter's team moved like ghosts, using cover and stolen weapons to cut through the enemy ranks. An explosion rocked the corridor as Ross placed an EMP charge near a power conduit. "Almost there," she shouted. Carter fired his last plasma round, then swung his rifle like a club, smashing an alien's skull. Blood sprayed against the wall. More guards came. Too many. Then, an alarm blared. Ross's eyes widened. "We're out of time." She slammed the device onto the main energy core and activated the hack. A deep hum filled the ship. Then, silence. And then, chaos. The fall of the HFY. Across Earth, alien shields flickered and died. Their warships, once untouchable, were now exposed. From the ground, human anti-air batteries roared, launching every remaining missile, every last bullet, into the now vulnerable warships. In the sky, alien vessels exploded, one after another. On the mothership, Carter's team ran as explosions tore through the halls. The once mighty war machine was collapsing from within. But the fight wasn't over. Vakor, furious and desperate, stormed into the chamber, his massive frame blocking the exit. "You think you have won," he snarled. "You are insects. You are nothing." Carter raised his plasma rifle. "Then why are you afraid?" Vakor roared and charged. The fight was brutal. The alien overlord was fast, strong, but Carter was human. He dodged, weaved, and struck. A final gunshot. Vakor stumbled. A hole burned through his chest. His golden eyes flickered, filled with rage and disbelief. Carter leaned in. "Welcome to Earth." Then the Overlord collapsed. The Exervac Empire had fallen. The final moments. As Carter's team escaped, Earth's forces finished the job. The alien warships burned in the sky, falling like dying stars. The Exervac survivors, leaderless and broken, fled. Earth had won. But Carter knew this was just the beginning. Because now, humanity was coming for the galaxy. Humanity's wrath. The war was over, but humanity was not done. The Exervac fleet was shattered. Their mighty warships lay in ruins, burning in the sky like dying embers. Their soldiers, once unstoppable, now fled in terror, retreating to their last strongholds. But Earth remembered. They remembered the cities that had burned. They remembered the millions who had died. And they were not going to let that Exervac escape. The hunt begins. Colonel James Carter stood on a ruined balcony overlooking what was left of Washington, D.C. The once great city was a shadow of itself. Smoke still rose from the rubble, but humanity had survived. A radio crackled in his ear. "Dr. Ross, the last of their forces are retreating into orbit." Carter's grip tightened on his plasma rifle. "Not this time. Tell the fleet to intercept. No survivors." Humanity was no longer defending. They were on the offensive. The last warship. Above Earth, the final Exervac warship, the Bloodborne, prepared to flee. Inside, Commander Xalroth clutched the control panel, his golden eyes filled with panic. "We must escape," he snarled. "The fleet is gone. The Overlord is dead." His officers hesitated. But the humans. A red warning light flashed across the ship's display. Enemy vessels incoming. Xalroth's blood ran cold. The humans had ships. That was impossible. Then he saw them. A ragtag fleet of Earth's stolen, repurposed warships, patched together with human and Exervac technology, rushing toward him. Faster, angrier, hungrier, and leading the charge. A warship painted with human blood-red letters. 2 words. Never again. The final battle. Inside the Never Again, Carter stood on the bridge, surrounded by former pilots, engineers, and resistance fighters. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were executioners. "Target the engines," Carter ordered. "Make sure they don't leave this system." A barrage of missiles and plasma fire erupted from the human fleet. The Bloodborne tried to raise its shields, but they were too slow. Explosions tore through the alien hull. Inside the alien ship, alarms screamed. "We're losing power," an officer shouted. Xalroth snarled. "We will not be defeated by these." The command center exploded, cutting his words short. As the Exervac's last warship burned, Carter gave the final order. No mercy. A single nuclear warhead was launched. It pierced the Bloodborne's core, and within seconds, the final ship of the Exervac fleet was gone. A message to the stars. As the wreckage drifted into space, silence filled the void. Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the debris. The war was over, but humanity had changed. No longer were they just survivors. They were warriors, conquerors. He turned to his crew. Broadcast this message to every remaining Exervac colony. The comm officer nodded and sent the transmission. Carter's voice echoed across the stars. This is Earth. You came to destroy us. You failed. If any Exervac remain, listen closely. We are coming for you. The rise of a galactic power. Back on Earth, the rebuilding began. But humanity was no longer content with waiting for the next invasion. They reverse-engineered every piece of alien technology they could find. They built new warships, stronger than anything before. They formed the United Terran Fleet, dedicated to one mission. Never again. Carter stood aboard Earth's first fully functional warship, staring at the stars. For years, humanity had been hunted. Now, it was their turn. With a final command, Carter gave the order that would change history. Set course for that Exervac homeworld. And for the first time in history, Earth was invading. The final stand. The Exervac homeworld, Vakar Prime, had never known fear. For centuries, it had stood as the heart of a ruthless empire. From this world, the Exervac had launched dozens of invasions, wiping out civilizations, enslaving species, and burning planets. Now, for the first time in their history, they were the ones being invaded. Earth's arrival. The United Terran Fleet emerged from hyperspace above Vakar Prime. Earth's warships, once makeshift and stolen, were now purpose-built for vengeance. Sleek black vessels lined with human and alien technology filled the void of space. At the head of the fleet, on the bridge of the UTS Retribution, Colonel James Carter stood, his eyes fixed on the massive planet below. Behind him, Dr. Ross monitored their sensors. Their defenses are online, she said. Massive orbital cannons, planetary shields. They're ready for us. Carter smirked. Good. He activated the comms, broadcasting to the entire fleet. This is Earth. Today, we finish what they started. No retreat. No surrender. Make them remember our name. The fleet surged forward. The sky burns again. Exervac warships rose from the planet's surface, their massive cannons firing plasma rounds into space. Earth's fleet dodged, weaved, and struck back. The first wave of missiles found their targets. Exervac battlecruisers exploded, their debris falling like fire onto their own world. Inside the Retribution, the crew moved with precision. Carter pointed at the planetary shield generator, a massive spire near the capital city. Target that generator, he ordered. We punch through that, and we take the fight to their doorstep. Fighter squadrons swooped in, dodging alien defenses as they unleashed a barrage of torpedoes. The shield flickered. A second wave of human warships unleashed nuclear warheads. Then, the shield collapsed. Carter exhaled. Now we go in, landing on a dying world. Drop pods pierced the atmosphere, streaking toward the surface. Carter's strike team hit the ground in the ruins of the Exervac capital, their boots crunching against the blackened streets. Buildings stood abandoned. The once great empire was crumbling from within. The last remaining Exervac forces gathered in the city square. Their leader, High Warlord Khazor, stood before them. He knew there was no victory here. But the Exervac had never surrendered before. And they wouldn't start now. The last battle. The streets became a war zone. Earth's soldiers moved like ghosts, trained in urban combat, guerrilla warfare, and precision strikes. The Exervac, desperate and enraged, fought back with everything they had. Plasma bolts ripped through the air. Explosions shook the ground. Hand-to-hand combat broke out in the ruins. Humans dodged claws, stabbed between armor plates, and used stolen alien weapons to cut down the enemy. Carter led from the front, his rifle blazing, his combat knife drenched in alien blood. One by one, the warlords fell. One by one, the Exervac defenses crumbled. Khazor, bleeding, fell to his knees before Carter. "You are monsters," he rasped. Carter aimed his rifle. "No, we're just human." A final gunshot. The Exervac Empire died in its own streets. The war ends. Humanity rises. The last Exervac dropped their weapons. Across the planet, the remaining cities surrendered. It was over. Humanity had done the impossible. They had faced an empire, and won. Carter stood on the balcony of the conquered capital, watching as the Earth flag was raised above the Exervac homeworld. Ross stood beside him. What now? Carter didn't hesitate. We rebuild. A new era had begun. Humanity had gone from prey to predator, from survivors to rulers. And the galaxy would never forget their name. The aftermath and humanity's future. The galaxy was silent. The mighty Exervac Empire had crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance. Their homeworld, once a shining beacon of conquest, was now a graveyard, a reminder of the price that had been paid. And from the ashes of that empire, something new was beginning. The rebuilding. On Earth, the work was just beginning. The war had ravaged entire cities, wiped out entire populations, and crippled infrastructure. But despite the damage, humanity's spirit remained unbroken. Colonel James Carter stood in a rebuilt war room, looking at a holographic map of the Earth. His uniform was worn, and his face was scared, but his eyes still held that spark, the one that had driven him and his team through the darkest hours of the war. We've won. Dr. Ross, standing beside him, nodded. We've rebuilt our planet, but it's going to take time. We're stronger, but we're still human. Carter nodded. And we're going to make sure that this never happens again. Humanity had not just won a war. They had claimed their place in the universe. The Exervac might be gone, but the war had opened their eyes to what they had the potential to become. A new era was dawning, the human expansion. With the fall of the Exervac, humanity had access to vast resources, alien technologies, ships, and weapons that had once seemed impossible to them. Intergalactic travel became possible. Using the stolen Exervac technology, human scientists quickly reverse-engineered hyperdrive engines that allowed Earth's warships to travel between star systems in a fraction of the time. No longer confined to one world, humanity began exploring the stars. Exploration fleets launched to chart unknown galaxies, colonizing new worlds and claiming them in the name of Earth. But with every new colony, humanity faced new challenges. The galaxy was filled with dangerous alien races, some of whom had known of the Exervac Empire's fall and wondered if Earth was now the greatest threat to their own survival. But Earth had one thing that the Exervac never understood: unity. Humanity's legacy. As the United Terran Fleet patrolled the stars, Earth's reach expanded further than anyone could have ever imagined. The fleets were no longer just protecting Earth, they were securing peace. Colonel Carter, now a legend, stood at the helm of the UTS Retribution, the flagship of the Terran Fleet. As Earth expanded into new territories, he knew that this was just the beginning. "We've taken the fight to their doorstep," Carter said to his officers. "Now we ensure that Earth's future is one of peace. We never forget what happened, but we don't repeat it." The galaxy would now know humanity's name. As Carter and his crew gazed out into the stars, Earth's ships patrolled the void. The Exervac had underestimated humanity's ability to survive, adapt, and fight back. Now, no one would ever make that mistake again. A new future. Back on Earth, people celebrated the victory, but there were no parades. The war had taken too much, too many lives, too many sacrifices. Instead, humanity set its sights on a new goal: to ensure that the galaxy would never again fall to such a destructive empire. The Terran Council was formed, a united front of all the human nations, a collective effort to guide humanity's future. They would work together to ensure peace with other galactic races, using their strength not to conquer, but to protect. Dr. Ross stood on a newly constructed spaceport, gazing up at a massive ship taking off. The UTS Horizon, the first ship built entirely from reverse-engineered alien tech, was leaving Earth to scout new worlds. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," she said, looking at Carter. "We're fighting for a future where humanity leads." Carter nodded. "And we will. The stars await." Humanity had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But their war wasn't just a story of survival. It was a story of strength, resilience, and the refusal to submit to tyranny. The Exervac thought they could take Earth. They thought humanity would fall, just as every other species had fallen before them. But humanity had shown them otherwise. Now, with the galaxy wide open before them, Earth was setting a new course. The stars no longer felt so distant. They were humanity's new home. The fleet set course for the next frontier. And Carter knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Humanity was no longer the prey. They were the hunters. And the galaxy was about to learn that humanity was here to stay.